Hello everyone, welcome to another installment of Cookie Pocket, joined by Zach and Mitchell as always, and today we will be discussing The Outsiders, a 1983 film directed by Francis Ford Coppola, adapted from a novel which title eludes me at the moment. But yeah, let's see. Originally written by S.E. Hinton. The novel's also called The Outsiders.
Yeah,
hey,
I thought that was a joke. Wow. The novel of the same name.
A bunch of other people are involved in this film, including C. Thomas Howell stars as Ponyboy Curtis. We have Matt Dillon as Dallas Winston and Ralph Macchio as Johnny Cade. And a lot of other recognizable names in here like Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, Tom Cruise, Diane Lane. The list goes on. Tom Waits for like 2 seconds.
Yes.
Zach was very excited about that. Anyway, this is, kind of a staple of the 80s, but it was the first time seeing this for me. I don't know about you two, but I'm trying to bring in more films this season that I had not seen yet. Trying to get out of the habit of just rewatching favorites with you guys and breaking into the world of arts cinema that I haven't. It's just floating above my head.
Mm-hmm.
But my reflexes are too fast now. I'm gonna catch the cinema. Oh dear. So, general thoughts and ratings out of 5 from each of you, please.
Well, I gave this a 4. Although, if I gave half ratings, I probably would have given it a 3 out of 5. A 3.5 out of 5. I feel comfortable with the 4 rating, and I do think that this is a really solid film. But throughout a lot of it, I was kind of sitting on that 3. I think Francis Ford Coppola, or Francis Coppola, as he goes by in the opening credits of this film, in the 80s, he dropped the Ford for a while. I'm not sure why. I think he really hit kind of a gold mine of casting with this film, because basically everybody who appears as not a hood, as a greaser, or and a couple of the socias even. They've gone on to be pretty major stars in the decades afterward. There are a couple who have kind of fallen through the cracks to just sort of character stardom, but most of these people are major names still. Unfortunately, I think a few that the narrative really hangs on are probably the weakest. I think C. Thomas Howell and maybe Diane Lane, although Diane Lane doesn't have as much screen time. But I think C. Thomas Howell, despite being the lead, delivers probably the weakest performance in this film. He's great physically, and he's very charismatic when all he has to do is just kind of like swagger around and sit in a location. There's a great shot in the hospital lobby when they're waiting to hear what happened to Johnny and how Johnny's doing with his burns after he's caught in a burning church, and he's just kind of leaning back against the bench, and he takes out his lighter and flicks it open and lights a cigarette and closes it again and puts it in his pocket. And in a moment like that, he embodies like John Travolta in Blowout or something like that. He really captures that movie star energy. But when he has to deliver lines, Ralph Macchio, Diane Lane, they're pretty stiff. And when these are the actors who are carrying most of the dialogue, it does get to a certain point where I was kind of wincing a little bit with some of the dialogue, especially since a lot of this dialogue is taken from a book that is, although mature writing for children, still writing for children. When you take that writing and that dialogue and you have it delivered in kind of a stilted manner, it really comes across as flat when it doesn't work. But that said, there are plenty of other performers who really make it work. I think Matt Dillon is kind of one of the standouts. Christian, you had pointed out that he's kind of the heart of this film, and I do agree with that. And I think where this film won me over to a 4 out of 5 instead of a 3 was the last third with the rumble and Matt Dillon's face-off with the law. That was the stuff that really convinced me of the 4. That in combination with the visual stylings, which I think visually this film looks great. There's a neat little pocket in the middle where it kind of takes on the look and feel of Gone with the Wind for a little while to kind of reflect Ponyboy and Johnny reading
Cade.
the book. There's also I'm a sucker for a good split diopter shot, and this movie has like a dozen of those. Some of them like back to back to back. So yeah, it's worth checking out. It's in the top half of my Coppola rankings right now, but certainly nowhere near either of The Godfathers or Apocalypse Now, which we watched last season, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Matt Dillon, I think that was my favorite scene at the end. And I have to agree with both of you on that, because we don't disagree on this pod without we always are apt on like, yeah, I agree. Like, no, I disagree, Zach. I don't think those split diopter shots, whatever they're called, are good. I think they're terrible. Yeah, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I think the most frustrating thing was it was the style. It was the style. I feel like there's a lot of really good messaging especially with C. Thomas Howell's character, and I also think I agree that he was like one of the weakest performances, considering he was so out there. I mean, really, he just doesn't have that good of a range, I guess, because I just saw Red Dawn last night, and he basically had the same amount of emotional range, if not more, actually, because a lot more terrible things happened to him in that movie than in this one, which is interesting. But yeah, I don't know. It's not like I have a problem with the style inherently or the way that it was shot, because I think there was so many creative shots in this that made each scene memorable beyond the dialogue, and I felt like the events that were happening to them spoke for themselves, and I feel like Coppola really let that, simmer. He let every scene simmer. I feel like it didn't. None of the dialogue felt like it was like wholly unnecessary, or it was like overshooting the Greaser versus Soch rivalry too much. And I commented on that in my review, that I thought that the rivalry, the way it like was brewing, and like the necessary fear that you have trying to avoid them and avoid the law and everything, I certainly felt that. But I mean, I completely agree pretty much with all the positives that you both said. I think that it really felt like a naturally occurring story. It didn't feel like there was like a one thing after another kind of thing. I guess the most you could argue for that is the church scene. And I guess that kind of felt the most like haphazardly inserted, I guess. It kind of just decided that there was a church burning in it. I mean, that's kind of what it felt like initially. But yeah, I think the naturalistic way that the plot went, where it felt spontaneous to the point where it was still kind of believable, and then it was teaching them of like a lot of lessons about leaving, and how much camaraderie can like help you through tough times, even when you're like have camaraderie with like not terrible people, but like I guess younger kids that are getting into bad stuff. I sound like a politician, and but yeah, I think I like the story. I couldn't get over how aggressive like the style was, and the smoking, and like the accents and everything. And I guess it's a part of the aesthetic, and it kind of lends to its originality, but at the same time, it's just like that Brat Pack thing really gets to me after a while. And I felt like the story it was trying to tell kind of grew out of that like limited shell that it was in for the entire runtime.
Fair enough. I landed on a 4 for this one. Excuse me. I do half-star ratings all the time. I think I have more 3.5-star ratings than I do. No, it's close. I barely have more 4-star ratings than 3.5-star total. But no, I really love this film more than I thought I would. And I will echo what Zach said about C. Thomas Howell, though I think that Coppola is aware of his limitations. I don't think he's asked to do too much emotionally or even in terms of line delivery. I think a lot of it kind of falls on Diane Lane, and I think she kind of picks up his slack in their one-on-one conversations. And then, like we've said, in the last third, when Matt Dillon kind of becomes the focus, I think that makes up for a lot as well. And I will offer a partial defense of Johnny Cade, Ralph Macchio. I'm not sure how to say that last name, but I think every scene he has when he's in the hospital bed is pretty harrowing.
He gets a lot better when he's in hospital, I think.
Yeah, he actually does. Yeah.
After that halfway point, that first scene with him in hospital and the bandages, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I won't include him by name as one of my weaker actors in my review, because I do agree with you, the hospital stuff is effective.
Yeah. Well, I also think right after he stabs the sock and he's kind of freaking out, I think that was really well played too, and a big challenge, especially when you cut. Basically straight from him like brandishing the blade to after it's happened. That's a hard thing to act. And this is only 91 minutes long, and I think it covers a ton of ground. And I mean, we've cited how huge this ensemble is, and all of these complicated interpersonal dynamics. We've got this brother group with Pony Boy and Soda Pop and Daryl. And then we obviously have the gang rivalry or whatever it is. It definitely, I think, inspires like an obvious comparison to West Side Story, except West Side Story is like almost twice as long.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I love that film, but I don't think it really covers those. I mean, there's more like racial stuff at play, which might merit more examination than two rival class gangs, but I just think it covers a ton of ground in 91 minutes and adapting a novel in that length. When it was over, I was like, was that 2 hours? Because I had thought going into it that it would be 2 hours, but it wasn't, obviously. No, I don't know. I don't have a lot of complaints. I worry a lot about ways that it could be dated in the dialogue, and like in the opening credits when they show the names, and then it like PowerPoint presentation transitions into like like scrolls down. I was kind of like, oh boy, here we go. But no, I think most of it played as sincere instead of corny to me. Yeah, I guess that's just my take on it. But Francis Ford Coppola is no stranger to nepotism. He's cast Sofia Coppola in the pivotal role of little girl in this film. And also, Carmine Coppola was the composer for this film. What did you all make of the score?
So, I know that Coppola later did a re-edit of this film, or like an extended edition, which is called The Outsiders, the Complete Novel, I think. And in a companion documentary to that version, he says that he thought that Carmine Coppola's score to the original version was a bit too sweeping and romantic, and he was afraid to say so because it was a score made by his father. I don't really think that it's too over the top for the film. It is this sort of sweeping romantic score, but I think what makes it work is the Gone with the Wind segment in the middle. And I think the recurring focus on Gone with the Wind and the idea that these kids sort of see their lives as this kind of grand romantic drama. Even if they do have a lot of struggles, and even if they do have a tough time of it, I think that they still, this has kind of become a cliche with social media, but I do think that they still kind of see themselves as the main characters of this grand dramatic adventure. And so for that kind of thing, I think that the Coppola score is great and really fits. And I haven't heard the score for the re-edits, so I can't really speak to that one. But yeah, I think the sweeping romantic thing works just fine. The musical aspect that I do think dates a little bit, and not because it's bad, but just because it's so immediately recognizable as like, oh, this is an 80s movie, is the Stevie Wonder single. Which is a good song. I really like Stevie Wonder up to a point.
However,
there are a couple bad Stevie Wonder albums, and a couple bad Stevie Wonder songs. Jungle Fever, but I mean, Stay Gold is a good song, but I think just the sort of synth Stevie Wonder style, the direct reference to a line from the film as the title of the song, that's very 80s. I think opening and closing with that kind of drags it down for me more than any aspect of the score does.
Yeah, I guess so too. I kind of forgot like halfway in the movie that was even in the beginning, and that they played at the end as
I
well.
think they did, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I was like, oh right, I remember when the movie started an hour and a half ago. Um, yeah, that fell out of place the most. I think the melodrama that like is overall trying to be achieved, I guess it works in that place, but I guess the issues I already mentioned, and then especially with the range of the actors, I think that was the biggest issue for me. I felt like it might have been trying to reach too high emotional heights when it didn't need to. But for the most part, I didn't find it distracting. I feel like it fit enough. I mean, I can't like recall any specific parts. I guess the rumble might have been the best part for me. I feel like that might have been pretty like recognizable. But yeah, I think it was pretty appropriate. I don't really have any complaints about it.
Oof. Okay, before I answer the question I posed, I'm glancing at the Wikipedia and I'm about to burst into tears because Val Kilmer was approached to play Ponyboy, but he turned it down as he was prepping a Broadway play, Slab Boys.
I saw that, yeah.
Rip.
I think I did see that, and I was like, Christian is going to make a point of this because Christian is in a bit of a Kilmer craze at the moment.
Indeed.
Even though I don't love C. Thomas Howell, I don't know if any era of Val Kilmer can embody the kind of clumsy adolescent bravery that C. Thomas Howell shows here. I think Val Kilmer is just too confident for that. Because even when Val Kilmer, and I'm obviously evaluating based on adult Val Kilmer, because I haven't seen any child performances from Val Kilmer, I don't believe. But Val Kilmer, even when he's playing like an awful person or a coward or somebody that we as the audience really shouldn't like, he's always got that swagger. And I think Ponyboy has to have that swagger, but you always have to be aware that that's like a veneer, and he's secretly like terrified, as all kids kind of are. And I don't know if Kilmer could have done that. That's a real tangent that just came up off of a Wikipedia article, but I wanted to throw that in because I did read that too, Christian.
No, that's a good point. I mean, Top Gun was only 3 years after this, so it's hard to imagine him being much more of an adolescent type performer. I thought I would take issue with the score. Cycling back, I really did, and I've said. I mean, in our recent episode, Angel Heart, I think I said something about the synth score dating dramatic moments for me. But I pretty much completely agree with what you said, Zach. I think the Stevie Wonder song is a little distracting, but otherwise I think the Coppola score throughout works really, really well. Yeah, what else do I want to say? I don't know.
Who was your favorite outsider?
Yeah, yes. We're going back to season 1.
Aren't we all outsiders?
Favorite character.
Ooh.
Yes, or favorite performer, or just talk about someone, anyone, please.
Rob Lowe coming out of the shower is my favorite outsider.
That's one of the...
Said someone on Letterboxd.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Who... I mean, a lot of the, outside of kind of the main four, which are Johnny, Ponyboy, Dallas, and Diane Keaton, the rest of them don't get a ton of screen time. Like, Tom Cruise is in this, but he mostly just says, like, a couple of lines while a bunch of other people are speaking and does a backflip. Like, it's not like a lot of the other, outsiders, the guys on the poster, they don't really have a ton of opportunity to show off, really. I think in terms of a character that really sticks out as being distinct and not just, an opportunity for a young up-and-coming actor to hoot and holler around on screen for a little while. I think Patrick Swayze's character, I forget his name.
Daryl Curtis.
Daryl. I think that's a really interesting character. Because he kind of represents, he's sort of like one of the lost boys who's realized, okay, one of us has to grow up eventually. And so he's he's still this kid who like gets into fights and doesn't really know how to look after the home. And he's still like this young man who has no idea what he's doing really, but he's the one who's had some awareness of like, okay, we have to like cook, and I have to like look after you guys and make sure that Child Protective Services doesn't come. Like one of us has to be in charge and be the grown up here. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic, because he becomes like this like accidental, reluctant father figure to not just his own brothers, but to kind of the rest of the gang. That's never really something that's really focused on. We don't see a ton of that, even though I think the most we probably get is when he hits Ponyboy, and we later see him like apologizing for that and his reaction to that. But I think that just that really kind of throws a spike into the dynamics of any scene that he's in when other people are around, because if all the outsiders are the same, then it's just like they're just like gremlins. But throwing one in there that's like, okay, guys, don't eat like all the cake and the beer for breakfast, okay? That leads to conflict in actual scenes, and I think that's interesting.
Dallas supremacy.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to get over how many cliches that he hit on in the very beginning by hitting on someone. But I think that it's interesting that he stayed the same. Like he was such a static character, but we learned more about him as it went on. And I feel like that is the reason why he had such an interesting dynamic, because it's a coming of age film, but in a lot of ways you basically feel like he's already come of age the whole time. And even though he's learning new things and like gaining new experiences, the way that he's reacting to them changes, and based on like how involved the kids are in it and like how emotionally distressing it is, I guess. So like really I would have been totally expecting him just to stay in the car during the church scene because of what we saw before. But then seeing him be more involved in it, then I'm like, wait, I totally got caught off guard. I guess I should have seen that he would be as like protective of them, like he was already guiding them and showing them how they can escape the authorities. And it's just cool to see that dynamic. And then obviously his like ultimate sacrifice in the end kind of just puts a fine point on it. So that's the only character I feel like that's like significantly dynamic enough where every time he came on the screen I was like, I definitely want to see more of him. I want to see like what the next scenario brings. And it's interesting that I found that a lot more with him than I did with Johnny and Ponyboy, because they're supposed to be the ones that we're supposed to be like empathizing with the most. So not to say that I didn't, but you know.
Yeah, I think our ages also kind of impact that. I think there's a reason
I feel
this
no angst.
novel gets assigned to like 6th and 7th grade a lot, or at least it did at the school, the middle school that I went to. There were English classes ahead of me that read The Outsiders and watched the film. And I think the reason it gets assigned to that age group is because when you're around that age, you're around the age of Ponyboy and Johnny, and maybe can kind of relate to their struggles and wanting to be like the big kids a little more. Whereas we have become the big kids who get into shootouts with the police. I mean, maybe not that big, but that's the age group of the characters I think maybe, at least for me, that we're more inclined to relate to. Is I look at this film and I see more of myself in a character like Dallas or Emilio Estevez. I mean, not that much Emilio Estevez, but kind of that age group I think are a little more relatable maybe to people our age. These guys who are they're out looking for jobs and they don't have a ton of money, but they know they gotta make money. But I kind of don't want to go to work. I mean, what was so wrong about not having a job? Why can't I be a kid again? That kind of like push and pull I think is maybe something assigned to the supporting characters here, and maybe we've become the supporting characters as we've grown older.
Yeah, man. Got my bachelor's degree now, man.
Yeah, Matt Dillon Supremacy, Cookie Pocket alumnus, by the way.
That's right.
Star in Beautiful Girls, which we discussed 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, that was season
I
2.
remember that.
Yeah. He's definitely my favorite, but there's a throwaway line about Daryl that I just wanted to draw attention to. I can't remember if Pony Boy or Soda Pop says it, but one of them says it to the other, and they say something like, if it wasn't for us, Daryl would probably be a sock. And that's kind of like all they needed to say.
Yeah.
And it's like towards the end of the scene, and I don't even think it's that prominent in the sound mix or anything, but I was just like, that makes a lot of sense. Matt Dillon's just awesome. And I love how Tom Cruise is just like inexplicably eating chocolate cake the entire time.
He always has something on his face.
Yeah, he's just munching on something and says very little. He's just kind of there. Yeah. I don't know.
He's also like jumping around, like slapping you and laughing.
Yeah.
And has that weird look on his face.
Yeah.
I think this is before the tooth procedure too.
Yes. This is pre-braces Tom Cruise.
So yeah.
He's just a hooligan. That's
we're gonna go get him. Let's go, yeah. He's like that in every movie. Yeah. He's gonna do it again in Mission Impossible.
Oh boy.
Oh, I hope so. That would be great. I welcome that. Was Matt Dillon right, or was Dallas right when he was like?
Matt Dillon was right. Yeah.
What I don't remember how he says it, but something along the lines of, you do good and you get nothing for it, or something like that. What do you make of his nihilism? English class time.
I'm gonna say, because I think I have a lot of cynicism in this department as well, that doing good for good's sake doesn't get you anywhere when you're doing that alone. I think, especially when you're in a situation, I think the situation of the outsiders in this book is meant to be, they're like stuck in a hole. And no matter what they do, no matter the good things they do and the people they try to help, even if they're hailed as heroes in the paper, they're always going to be in that hole, and they're not going to be able to climb out if they focus just on doing good things. And at some point, if you're stuck in a hole, you got to start being kind of ruthless and working for yourself to find your way out of that hole, which I think you could argue is why he ends up in his eventual gunfight at the end, as he kind of resorts to that conclusion in a very chaotic way. And I do think that that's sort of true in reality as well. Can doing good things and just helpful things get you somewhere? In our modern world, I think that they can, but I think when that happens, it's more luck than it is the rule. If you dedicate your life to charity and helping others, that's all very good, but a lot of the time, those people that you're helping are not going to help you in return. You're going to have to help yourself as well along the way and use that momentum to help others as you go. Nietzsche told me that.
Well, I'll tell you a better philosophical authority than Nietzsche, Zach. Besides Marcus Aurelius, it's the Boy Scouts, and the Boy Scouts slogan is "Do a good turn daily," and I think that's a great motto, slogan thing for children, because as you grow older, you realize that you have to make decisions as you gain more responsibility, and I feel like attempting to be good and do good things is fruitless, because you have to attempt and do good things by doing things that you enjoy, doing things that help other people naturally. So like, I've never heard of anybody like saying the reason why they do charity or they do volunteer work is because they're trying to do good things. It's always like a professed reason. Like, they always have their own personal reason for doing something. and I feel like in the context of the film, that works really well. It's easier to tell kids, like, just do good things and be nice to people and say your P's and Q's. Don't put your elbows on the table and don't watch TikTok at the table either. But at the same time, it's nice to, or just don't watch TikTok at all. But I think the good thing with Dallas is that he was doing things out of his own volition, and maybe it was because of the way that he was raised. But I feel like in this context that Coppola sets up, I feel like it's the condition that he's in, being in a lower class and being a part of this ragtag team of greasy people. I feel like that is, like, he naturally was inclined to help his fellow brothers and just do whatever they're doing, even if it's good or bad. And I think over that experience, I feel like experience is what's going to teach him. So I agree with what he said, and I think that it's really, it puts a fine point on the coming of age part, because some things for a kid, you're like, just do nice things, do good things, then you're going to grow into it, make bad decisions, and then learn from them. For Dallas, he's still, like, coming into that, like, he's still making bad decisions, and he's still in this, like, this hole he can't get out of, like you said, Zach. And I think in this case, it's just better to react to your environment in the way that's conducive to everyone else in addition to yourself. And I feel like being a greaser does help you have that camaraderie and encourage those good things eventually. It just takes time and experience. And obviously with the kids, like the stabbing and stuff, that was like the first major, like, wake up call.
I'm also going to throw my Boy Scout credentials on the table here, because the Boy Scout slogan might be "Do a good turn daily," but the motto is "Be prepared." So I think even a pillar of virtue like the Boy Scouts acknowledges that, yes, do good things, but also look out for number one.
That was good, Zach.
That was really good.
That was really good. Don't forget about loyalty. No, never mind.
A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful.
Oh, jeez.
Through brave, clean, and
We are Americans.
In Red Dawn, they call the Boy Scouts a fascist, like, combat thing or something. Special forces. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I have much to add to that. Yeah, it's about generational trauma, but it is, though. And I mean, it's like this cycle of neglect, and I think maybe Daryl will be the first to break it. When they reconcile, but who knows? Yeah, I don't know. It's a touching story. Any closing thoughts?
I'm really interested to see Rumblefish now.
Me too.
Because that I think Matt Dillon is like the full-on star of that one. And that's also Mickey Rourke is in that one. Cookie Pocket alum Mickey Rourke. And I'm also just really intrigued to see how that differs visually to The Outsiders. Because this is a very colorful, kind of flashy, stylistic film. It's in 2.35:1, like a scope ratio. But Rumblefish it's in black and white. I've heard that it's a lot more kind of nailed down and almost like French New Wave-esque. So I'm very intrigued to kind of see those back to back and how one kind of gives and takes with the other as companion films. Yeah, I would certainly recommend The Outsiders. I think common sense media is full of parents saying, I can't believe they made my children watch this in school. It's so violent. But I think if you're like 14, 15, like early teens, maybe even late preteens, I think that this is like a fine film for that age group, and I think you'll definitely relate to the struggles of the main characters, or at least have some empathy for them in a way that maybe we old fuddy-duddies aren't quite as directly capable of.
Put down your jewel and start reading Gone with the Wind. I'm tired of you, kids. Yeah, but you can smoke. That's okay. I mean,
but not more than a pack.
There was one. Yeah. Wait until you're older and you're good. I think, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with all that. I agree with it. It's not fine. It's fine. I agree. Yeah, I think it's a good, like, if you're good with that aesthetic, and if you're like you're delving into Coppola at the same rate that I am, which is sometimes very fast and sometimes very slow, then, and you like Coppola but don't like Sheen. If Martin Sheen isn't in it,
Well, his son is in it.
yeah,
Emilio
Yeah.
Estevez.
yeah. Well,
He's good. He's good.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fun. I like it, and I think it's a good coming of age story. I think it definitely comes across as a film that was for younger age groups. And I'm just a boomer, I guess. That's why I gave it a 3.5.
Yeah. I gave it a 4. I think it's I don't know. It exceeded expectations for me. And Zach already mentioned this, but I just want to echo again how well choreographed the rumble is. I got really nervous when the two gangs were facing each other, and I was going to be like, I was worried in like 30 seconds it would all look ridiculous and just kind of dissolve, but it's really well choreographed and dirty, and it feels like real punches are being thrown, and there's this tension of like Daryl always like looking over his shoulder to make sure Pony Boy and Soda Pop aren't getting destroyed by someone big, and yeah, just a great scene there. Yeah, so that's The Outsiders. Shall we review our weeks?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Well,
Who's first?
Speaking of Tom Waits. Oh, Mitchell has his hand up. Mitchell, would you like to go first?
This is I want to go first.
Okay, I don't know. It might be.
It's the
I wanna
Apple
go first,
emoji
Zach.
of like the
No, go
single
Zach.
shrug.
You're on a roll.
Well, speaking of Tom Waits, who makes a very brief appearance in this film because Coppola kept giving him cameos after he did the score for One from the Heart. I am on a Tom Waits streak right now for discography listens, and today I listened to The Black Rider, which came out, I think, in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. And last time I talked about Tom Waits, I talked about his debut, where he's much more kind of classical blues piano. He's kind of got a gruff voice, but he very much kind of embodies that late night bar crooner. This is not that. This is Tom Waits Gone Weirdo, which is a lot of fun. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's a little too weird. But this one really works for me. This he made as the soundtrack to a play, which was written by William S. Burroughs, which, if you know anything about Burroughs, that's like a weirdo match made in heaven. This is like clearly inspired by like German expressionism, and summons like the sounds of a carnival, and there's constant like hurdy-gurdy and weird accordion, and it's a real concept album that follows the plot of the play as the soundtrack to any musical would. And the plot here is really simple and kind of autobiographical on William S. Burroughs' account. It's about a poor peasant who is in love with a more wealthy woman, and so he makes a bargain with the devil, and the devil gives him a gun that will shoot and kill anything that he desires, but there's one bullet in that gun that the devil controls what that shoots. And I'll leave you to assume where that bullet ends up. But it's a lot of fun, and Waits is doing voices for like Satan and all of the different characters in the play, and I had a riot with it. I said in my Twitter thoughts that if I had discovered this as a semi-reluctant theater kid in high school, it would have totally blown my mind. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's perfect, but it's probably one of my favorite Waits albums so far. 4 out of 5. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to based on Waits' last album, Bone Machine, which was one of the first ones in a while that I was like, it wasn't that great. But The Black Rider, real recommend. Yeah.
So, looking at my dog, and she wants me to do Knock at the Cabin.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Charlie. You guys know. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
Okay, See, now our listening ship just gained like 50 people.
There was a dog.
There was a dog. Yeah, Knock at the Cabin. It's y'all's favorite director, especially Christian's, Shyamalama. M. Night Shyamalama, the creator of the first live-action Avatar, The Last Airbender adaptation, known as The Last Airbender. And I think Knock at the Cabin was okay. It was all right. It didn't really come across as a Shyamalan film in a way where the story felt oriented to the dialogue, and I think that's kind of a major problem for a lot of people, is that a lot of his dialogue feels very like ChatGPT, and it's very there's just like an air about it that sounds like it's unnatural to the point where it's like, even if the actors are good, it still doesn't feel like it in place. And I made the argument for like Unbreakable and Split are like my two first ones, and even The Sixth Sense, that I feel like that awkwardness kind of fits the story and fits like the scenarios the characters are in. It does in this case. It's kind of about these four people in the woods that come to a cabin, and there's a gay couple and their adopted kid there, and they kind of have to explain to them this scenario that they're all involved in, and they have to kind of get out of that scenario. And I think it's a great premise. I feel like the casting was literally perfect. He does Drax better than he does Drax. And that's what I gotta say. I feel like, and there are some really creative camera angles, especially in the beginning, that really build tension, and I feel like Shyamalan's been consistently good with that. But yeah, Dave Bautista sticks out to me, and I was trying to look up Rupert Grint's in it, and everyone's mentioning how he's like a homophobe in it, and that's ironic because of Harry Potter and stuff. But the best Shyamalan cameo, I'll say. And then Abby Quinn as Adrian, I thought was especially good. She was very awkward, and she came across really well. And it's very obvious it's a book adaptation, and I don't think Shyamalan really needed to direct this. I feel like this just doesn't appeal to his directing style as much, and it's not necessarily because of the way the third act comes out. It's more of like, I just wish that he had just come up with his own story that was in the same, like a similar scenario, and a lot of it has to do with doomsday stuff and like the end of the world, and I feel like there's a lot of different ways he could have gone about it instead of just adapting the story, and apparently he took a lot of creative liberties in the last act to make it spin more like a Shyamalan film, and I do not think it worked. I felt like I was literally being spoken to at the very end, and that's the most I've ever felt from a Shyamalan film, where I was literally having everything explained to me like I didn't watch it already, and to just watch the film like, you know, it's an hour and a half, I think. I'm pretty sure it was an hour and a half, so it was a pretty brisk going. I thought literally everybody was casted great. It's a very tightly knit cast, and I really agreed with that decision. I gave it a 3, and I think it's worth checking out at all if you're a Shyamalan fan. And his I would say the cinematography is the most like recognizable thing for me, and the awkwardness of the characters. But you know, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like Shyamalan already, I don't think you're gonna like it. But
yeah, sounds like I won't like it. Let's see. I'm going to try to keep it current here and talk about everyone's favorite leading performer, Ezra Miller, in The Flash.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God.
2023. Though it's been in development, I think, for like 20 years, maybe?
I think longer.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, this was a doozy, and I really got sucked into the hype train on this one when Stephen King called it one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, and then like somebody said Tom Cruise requested to watch it early and loved it, and then James Gunn was hyping it, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid, guys. I was so ready to love The Flash. I gave it a 2.5, but in retrospect, I think that was pretty generous, because that gives it equal footing with stuff like Doctor Strange in the Weird World, which I think Zach will discuss, if not today, then soon.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead on Marvelous Cinemator, but yeah, soon.
You really need to enjoy Ezra Miller's performance a lot to like the film, and not even weighing the real world accusations or whatever. I've just never been a big Ezra Miller person. The comedy is fine, but it wears on me after a while, and it's not even that it annoys me. It just doesn't really entertain me that much either. My biggest criticism for this is not even multiverse plot nonsense, of which there is plenty, as is par for the course now for this stuff.
Please end it.
But just when the Flash runs, it just looks so stupid. It doesn't look cool.
But it's supposed to be comic booky, Christian.
And it
Come
doesn't
on.
look comic booky.
It was intentional.
I've seen Spider-Verse. I know what comic booky is supposed to look like. This just looked bad.
Get out of my face with that.
He's doing like this weird like thing with his arms where he's like waving in front of himself. And there's this one scene where, spoiler, he like loses his powers for a stretch, and then he's like running around the room doing his weird little arm thing at like a normal speed, and it's played for laughs because it looks ridiculous. But then when he actually has his powers, it still looks that bad, and it's not played for laughs. And I think about like the Quicksilver, Evan Peters Quicksilver, and I don't know if he's in First Class, but in those semi-recent X-Men films, how he has these super cool sequences where everything just slows down and he's just like awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing in this even like remotely approaches that level of coolness. But Keaton is like fine, I guess. I don't know much to say. Sasha Calle as Supergirl was awesome. She was great, and I hope they keep her for James Gunn's world.
James Gunn's world.
Yeah, I don't know how else. Multiverse, whatever, man.
JG.
Yeah. Michael Shannon is great. He's always great, but they don't ask him to do anything other than basically reenact Man of Steel, and he has like no screen time, so it's just like annoying. And then there's just some really dubious CG cameos in here. And if you want to read it up on those, just Google it, I guess. But I mean, geez,
okay.
Man. And I mean, there's a lot to criticize, but I kind of take a step back and even like enjoying little moments of it. The hardest thing for me to get around is that the Flash doesn't have the star power for his own film without having multiple Batmen and a Kryptonian sharing the bill with him. And that's just gonna limit your movie a lot, and it doesn't look good, like visually. So I mean, whatever, 2.5. It's probably more of a 2. I would understand if you gave it even a 1. Honestly, I was sad. I was excited to see it, but yeah, that's on me, I guess.
What? Okay, these are very dubious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's just do everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there are some weird lines. Like Barry Allen has some lines where he like references kidnapping, and then there's like one scene where fans are like, they see the Flash and they're like, oh my God, it's the Flash. And then Ezra Miller's like, hi. And then one of them's like, I love you. And he's like, thanks. And then I'm just thinking of him like choking the fan in the convenience store. There are like at least a few instances where it's just like, wow, this is just like when he did that. That's.
I think the thing for me that has, and I was never going to be interested in The Flash, but the thing for me that has made me go, yeah, I don't think this is a good movie at all, is anytime anybody seems to be describing something they liked in the film or why the film is actually good, that takes the form of them basically just beat for beat recalling certain scenes and jokes. And for me, that's usually the mark of a film that isn't very good, when you can't like speak to its quality at all without, or you can't even speak to its quality. All you can do is just recount jokes that you liked. That's usually not a good sign in my experience.
Yeah. And when I was talking about it with my parents, who I saw this with, most of the things they said in defense of it were like, when they played the theme song from Burton's Batman, that was so cool. And I was like, yeah, it was cool. It's also from another movie, so I can't like give this credit for copying and pasting that. It's I feel like I sound like a jerk, but that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Christian hates his parents.
No. Hey, I put tags in my letterbox. I keep track of who I watch films with. And the top 4 people I watch the most movies with, 4th place is Mom. 3rd place is Zach. 2nd place is Mitchell. Mitchell is Zach beat by 1 film. And 1st place is Dad. So
wow,
those are my, and all of you have.
I was number 1
more.
for a while. I was tracking that.
Yeah. I think I rewatched all of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings films with my dad, and that's how he leapfrogged you there.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Maric, you're on my hit list now. How ironic. Anyway.
I have no idea what our next segment is. Somebody enlighten me.
Marvelous Cinemator, I think.
Yeah. How marvelous is the Cinemator?
So today, since we skipped the Cinemator with our last guested episode, I'll be talking about 2 films. Though I'll be talking about one of them only briefly, because I watched The Eternals and I watched Spider-Man No Way Home. I think we discussed No Way Home like 3 different times on the podcast last season, because we talked about it on Week in Review when you saw it, Christian. I think we talked about it again when you saw it, Mitchell. And then I think at some point I talked about it too. And I don't remember why, but I did see it for a first time, and this was a rewatch. And I think when I first saw it, I was charitable because I saw it in a cinema, and I thought, these movies aren't my thing, but I get that this is kind of cool, and I gave it a 3 out of 5. I gave it a 3 out of 5 again this time, but I said in my Letterboxd review that this is the first one of these movies that while watching it, I have come to the realization that these are movies for literal children, because I think everything about the plot of this film is so dumb. And it's literally it's just there to get a bunch of cameos in the room. The conceit that Peter is going to develop a liquid injectable instant cure for mental illness is dumb. It's so like Saturday morning cartoon. The plot doesn't matter. The kids just want to see Spider-Man punch the bad guy. And there are some charming enough moments, and I will admit that the direction is a little bit more creative than it was for the previous 2 MCU Spider-Man films. But yeah, this one really didn't work outside of cinema for me, due in part to the plot, but also there's so many awkward gaps for laughter that the movie would be like 5% shorter if they had like actual reasonable pauses between lines. There's so many moments, especially when the 3 Peters talk, where it's like, all right, hold for laugh and go. And it's so awkward to watch outside of a cinema, because in the cinema, even when people aren't laughing, there's still kind of that mood where you're taking it in, and the gaps don't feel as bizarre. But when you're just watching it in your living room, it really hits you that you're like, wow, okay, I was meant to laugh there, and nobody laughed. So yeah, 3 out of 5, but I certainly don't think it's very good. Now time to talk about the meat and potatoes. You would hate the Flash so much.
What was that? You would hate the Flash so much if you think No Way Home is stupid.
Okay, now time for the meat and potatoes. The Eternals. I think I'm the only member of this trio that's seen The Eternals. Is that right?
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
So, okay, The Eternals was directed by Chloe Zhao, who is a very talented director. Okay. I have liked her previous efforts quite a bit, and she's made some good films. But it's such a weird choice for her to direct a Marvel film, because this is a woman who directs entirely naturally lit films about like people living in poverty, that are basically like pseudo documentaries, except there's one actor and she's in the midst of like real people who are homeless or living in vans or something. And it's like, why did you take this director and give her all the money in the world to make this movie? Because this is so long, and clearly they're trying to do something different, and I will applaud them to a certain extent, because it is something different. The issue is that it's not something good different. I mean, it has a really talented cast, and a really talented director, and it doesn't look terrible, but the script is just so dull and repetitive. I laid out the structure in detail in my Letterboxd review, but I will recount it now for you. The structure of this film is some people who are apparently immortal talk to each other. Then they go to a new location and find a new person who is occasionally apparently immortal. Then they get attacked by multicolored alien animals. One of the characters might die. Then they go to another new location. They meet another person who is apparently immortal. They talk for a while. They get attacked by multicolored animals, and one of them may die. Then they go to another new location and just rinse, repeat over and over and over again. And it's so dull. And I, watching it, I felt like I was having a dream, because it was like, the MCU is not something I like, but they at least feel like movies that somebody might enjoy, and they feel like movies that were made for somebody. They might not have been made for somebody who's especially like picky about their film choices, but they feel like they were made for somebody to go, whoa, Captain America. The Eternals feels like a movie I made up in my head and had a weird dream about that didn't really have a plot. It's by far, I think, I can't call it the worst of these. I do think Black Widow is a worse film, but it's definitely the most boring. And it's only just above Black Widow, because I gave this a 2 instead of a 1. Because I'm at least going to give this some credit for trying something. And I talked to Christian about this yesterday. I don't think I can judge this too much on its ending, because it's pretty clear that it's meant to be continued at some point. But the fact that none of the future MCU installments have even paid reference to the ending of this film seems to me like they're trying to sweep it under the rug real quick. I don't feel bad about spoiling this, because this movie is over a year old at this point, or maybe almost a year. I think over a year.
I think over.
But basically, the ending of this film, an enormous planet-sized creature is making its way out of the earth, like it's hatching like a chicken out of an egg, and then it gets turned to stone. So at the end of this movie, there's an enormous head and 2 hands of a gigantic, like an impossibly huge creature just sticking out of the earth. The end of this movie, essentially, there is a new continent on planet Earth, and they have not made any reference to this whatsoever in any of the other Marvel films since its release. And I think if there's any indication of this movie just being a multi-million-dollar fart in the wind, it's that. When even Kevin Feige, the biggest nerd on planet Earth who will forgive like anything as long as, you know, it'll be a comic reference in his movie, won't pay reference to the end of your film. Oh, buddy. I mean, they brought Tim Blake Nelson's leader back, and they're not even going to acknowledge the continent-sized monster sticking out of the earth. Yeah, this ship is going down, and you know, I'm gonna bail until we hit Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
What is a Red Hulk?
But when we hit Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I'm getting in a lifeboat. Women and children be damned. So 2 out of 5 for the Eternals. Time to move on.
Does Kumail Nanjiani ever reference the movie title where he's like, "Well, I guess we've come together and realized we are the Eternals"?
No, Kumail Nanjiani isn't even in the climax.
I heard that.
Well, then what's the point?
So they assemble a team, and then a member of the team becomes like a semi-villain, and then Kumail Nanjiani like agrees with him, but he's like, "Hey, don't beat us up though." So there's a little fight before the climax, and then Kumail Nanjiani just goes, "I abstain from this conflict," and leaves. And he doesn't appear in the climax at all. The team, I think is
just like Mandalorian.
I think there's like 8 or 9 Eternals, but only like 4 of them have anything to do with the climax of the movie. So by the climax, by like the peak of the action, you can't help but look around and think, well, what did we spend 2.5 hours meeting all of these people for when only half of them have anything to do with the conclusion? Yeah, I saw this movie like 2 weeks ago, and I still have a lot of thoughts about it. But we should move on because we're almost hitting an hour.
Oh yeah, right on. Okay, what?
Rundown.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Run the
This is where we.
We're gonna give Christian. Huh?
This is where we take over the podcast from Christian for
Yes.
a while.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Wrenching it from my cold dead hands.
Yeah.
All right. Am I timing or are you, Mitchell?
You'll time
Okay.
it.
Are you going to
Zachary.
start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start the run, and you'll do the down.
All right. Stay gold, pony boy, in 3, 2,
It sounded just like
1.
Stevie Wonder.
4 out of 5.
Not liking little kids.
2 out of 5.
When you see what's hanging.
3 out of 5.
Offering soft drinks.
4 out of 5.
Fair fight ain't rough.
3 out of 5.
Train trauma.
3 out of 5.
Mustangs and Madras.
3 out of 5.
Patrick Swayze trauma.
4 out of 5.
Switchblade haircuts.
4 out of 5.
Animal acting.
4 out of 5.
Quoting Robert Frost.
5 out of 5.
Blondie, man.
4 out of 5.
Heroic family reunion.
3 out of 5.
Tom Cruise scenes.
4 out of 5.
Rob Lowe scenes.
4 out of 5.
Cake beer combo.
3 out of 5.
Gorilla cookies.
3 out of 5.
Ready copies of Gone with the Wind.
3 out of 5.
Rainy fight choreography.
4 out of 5.
Staying gold.
4 out of 5.
All right. And that is our list complete with 1 second to spare.
All right.
Wow.
Nice.
Clean.
And my first 5, I think, given on the rundown, if I'm recalling correctly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Sparing. Okay.
Well, I
I've
think
had a lot of good Garrigus sound bites today between women and children be damned and we are the age to have shootouts with the police or whatever the other one was.
That's really what this is all
well,
about.
Yeah.
before I dig
Take it away,
myself
Zach.
a deeper hole, Mitchell, would you like to preview what we'll be talking about next time?
Would I like to preview what's next, Zach?
Yes, would you?
Oh my god. The anticipation is insane. Okay? Tom McGrath is the greatest director of all time. And I don't know if you've ever seen Boss Baby, but this is the progenitor to every animated film that's funny, okay? Megamind. We're doing Megamind. The 2010 Paramount, the 300 million in the box office.
Wow.
Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, David Cross, Brad Pitt. Everybody's in this, okay? This is the greatest triumph of humanity pre-COVID. And that's a fact. Okay.
You know what? I will say, I think, thinking back, Megamind may have been the first film that I saw an ad for in the cinema, and immediately upon walking out went, I want to see that movie.
Yeah, this is probably going to be our silliest Movie Pocket episode, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
I
gonna
think
be
ever.
great.
We'll find out. Tune in next time. Next week
Yeah.
or whenever.
Don't miss it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been another Cookie Pocket.
Yay!
Yeah. Bye.
Stay gold.